So you bought a Helm of the Dominator. Congratulations on your purchase. This instructional video will show you how to use your newly acquired Helm, which creeps to get, how to control them, and how early and late game usage differs.
My holiness deepens.
Welcome to the Church of Obelisk. If you're new here and you want to get in-depth content on Chen and other micro heroes, I invite you to join the fold by subscribing and ringing the bell. Now let's get into the video. Let's talk about the early game first. These three creeps are the main ones you want to get if you get this early Dominator timing. If you get Dominator, at sub 10 minutes, that's pretty good. And these are the kinds of creeps that allow you to just dominate the early game with the Dominator. They get 59 HP, they have 425 movement speed. This is much faster than most heroes are going to be in the early game. So it's very easy to just go up to heroes and stomp them. This is a 2-second stun on heroes, which of course is very strong in the early game. Later on it gets a bit harder to land these stomps because heroes get faster. They have more items that allow them to have extra mobility, like Blink Dagger, Force Staff, and so on. So later on this is a lot harder to land, but in the early game this Centaur Conqueror is king. And he's especially strong on Darkseer because of this vacuum into stomp combo. And he's also very strong on Lycan because he just gets even more movement speed with the ultimate, so then it gets really easy to get those stomps off. And just having this extra disable on Lycan is very important because even though you move at 650 movement speed during your ultimate, if someone's running away from you, you're still getting a lot fewer hits in than you would otherwise. So having this stomp allows you to just all you need to catch up, sort of surround the enemy and easily kill them. And if you get Helm of Dominator on Chen, you probably want this to be a Dominator creep. Because for this creep, movement speed is much more important than for most other creeps. So you want this to be a Dominator creep and then use your regular creep slots for other creeps. Or also possibly additional centaurs. Having several centaurs in the early game can be quite devastating. Another great creep is this Hellbar Smasher. Has this Thunderclap ability, which slows and deals 150 damage. And also has this aura, which gives 15 attack speed, which of course is very strong on Visage. Just allows its familiars to do a lot more DPS. And then of course the Swiftness aura synergizes quite well with the damage aura that Dominator provides, especially on heroes that deal a lot of creep-based damage, like Lycan or Visage. This Thunderclap falls off even harder than the Stomp from the Centaur, because it's only a slow, and slows just aren't very good outside of the early game. But in the early game, of course, this is very strong. I will perhaps even put this creep in a slightly higher tier than the Centaur for heroes that rely on creep to do physical damage. So heroes like Visage and Lycan really like this creep. Whereas for a hero like Darkseer, you really want that Centaur because just Stomp is a lot stronger than just slowing people. And you already provide plenty of damage with your Iron Shells. It's more about disabling people rather than dealing damage. Now, the third creep that's really strong in the early game is this Satyr Tormentor. This has this Shockwave ability, which deals 160 damage, travels for quite a long distance. You can see its travel distance is a lot farther than the actual targeting distance. So this is a very strong creep in the early game, has enough mana for 4 shockwaves and only 8-second cooldown, so you can spam these abilities out, and then you want to replace this creep because it provides this regen aura, but you already have usually plenty of regen with Dominator. So you're more interested in this shockwave. You want to use this creep, you want to get in there, shockwave your enemies, push out the waves, use up those shockwaves, and then when your 1 minute cooldown is up, just get another creep with Dominator and replace this. This creep sort of falls off pretty hard in the mid and late game. The shockwave has no sort of slow or anything to disable, it's just damage, which is nice and all, but in the late game it's no longer the best creep. So these are like the big 3 creeps you get in the early game, but then there's here some more that are a bit more niche. So you have this Dark Soul Summoner, which is quite strong. So this Dark Soul Summoner has a ensnare ability, which is a 1.75 second root, but it does not cancel channeling spells. It does, however, cancel TP scrolls. So TP gets cancelled, but if you channel Black Hole here, it still keeps channeling. So this is also a creep that's more of an early game creep. Like roots also fall off as the game goes on because people get BKBs and so on. But in the early game this can give you a lot of disable. Downside of this Dark Soul Summoner is he doesn't have a lot of right click damage. Only has 42, whereas the other creeps have a bit more. So one way of making up for that is using Raise Dead. These skeletons have 24 damage and they attack quite quickly. So if you have the skeletons alive, they do a lot of damage. But the problem, of course, is that they are quite fragile. They have 250 health and they have no magic resist, only 1 armor. These die incredibly quickly, but they can do a lot of damage. And they're also quite slow. So generally, this is the kind of creep you want if you already have plenty of damage, but you need some catch. So if you're playing something like a Lycan and your team doesn't have the most disable, it can be very valuable to get this Dark Soul Summoner and just ensnare people to allow your Wolves and Necro units and so on to catch up. Another very interesting creep is this Harpy. You notice I got a lot of vision here. This Harpy actually has full night vision, has the same night vision as a Slark or a Night Stalker. It has 1800, whereas most heroes only have 800 vision at night. So getting this Harpy at night is actually quite strong. And also, of course, it has this chain lightning ability. It does 140 damage, all it jumps to nearby targets, so this does a lot of damage. This Harpy was a bit nerfed in the last patch. They reduced the mana pool from 400 to 150, which of course means you can only get out like 3 of these with the initial mana pool, but they also buffed the mana regen, so they have 3 mana regen per second. You see this mana regenerates really quickly, so you can still get quite a few chain lightnings out there before you run out of mana. And this is a creep that if you get it earlier on, of course, this chain lightning is quite strong. And later on, if you get it at night, it's still quite valuable because it provides just a lot of vision. And this can also break Lincolns and so on. So this is quite a useful creep. It's generally a bit lower tier compared to the other creeps. But if you run across it at night and the night is still going to go on for a bit, you might as well pick this up because it's actually quite strong to have this huge night vision. And then the last of these strong early game creeps is this one, the Alpha Wolf. The Alpha Wolf gives a 30% damage aura and also has a critical strike, which is not too relevant, but still, I mean, with this critical strike and the pack leader aura, this Alpha Wolf deals about as much right click damage as these big creeps. So generally this Alpha Wolf is more of a mid and late game kind of creep because this aura is the main selling point. But if you have a hero like Visage, who just deals a lot of damage with his familiars, this aura is very strong even in the early game, and especially if you're facing melee heroes, it just helps you overcome this damage block that melee heroes have. So this Alpha Wolf group is very strong in Visage, also to a lesser extent strong on Lycan, but on Lycan you probably rather want that Centaur or the big Hellbear Smasher, because those just provide you a lot more utility, whereas this one is just damage. Let's move on to the late game now. What creeps are good in the late game? And the answer obviously is aura creeps. And here of course is our good old friend, the Alpha Wolf. 30% damage boost is pretty good in the early game on a hero like Visage, and it's amazing in any case in the late game. Even if you're playing a hero like Darkseer, still this is a great creep to get in the late game. It's not going to do very much for yourself, but it's certainly going to boost the damage of the other heroes in your team. and that is sort of what Helm of Dominator is all about in the later stages of the game. So another great creep to get is this Frost Mage. It has the ice armor, gives 6 armor to the target, and also it slows the enemy for quite a long time. And you see slowed forever. Look how long this takes. This ability was changed in the Outlanders update. The armor was reduced, but now it also affects ranged heroes. So any hero who attacks this ice armor target gets this slow, which lasts for 5 seconds, and there's a 30% attack and movement slow. So this is a really strong buff against any sort of right-clicking hero. So the Alpha Wolf and the Ogre Frost Mage are your #1 creeps to get in the late game. And now we're going to move on to some creeps that are slightly lower down the list, but still quite useful. All going to be aura creeps. This is of course an old friend, the Helm Smasher. In the late game, of course, Thunderclap is no longer very useful, but the aura is still quite useful. It's 15% attack speed, of course not as strong as the Alpha Wolf aura, but still quite useful. Then we have the Cloak creeps. This is the small Hellbear. There's also the small Centaur that also has this Cloak aura. This aura used to stack, it doesn't anymore, but if you're playing Helm of Dominator, you don't really care about that anyway, because you only have one of these creeps. And this gives a 20% magic resistance on creeps and 10% on heroes. This is not as strong as these other very strong creeps, not as strong as the Alpha Wolf, not as strong as the Frost Mage, but still this is a quite useful aura, especially facing a team with a lot of magic damage. So this is a creep you can consider picking up in the late game. And now here we have a very underrated creep, and that's the Wildwing Ripper. This Wildwing Ripper of course has the Tornado ability, which allows you to use this Tornado, which does actually quite a lot of damage. In the units nearby get 45 damage, units a bit farther away get 15 damage, also has a slight slow. This is not that important for Helm of Dominator. This is more of an ability that's great if you get this creep on like Chen or Ench and you have this very early on in the laning stage. Later on this is not that impactful, but if you, for example, if you're sieging high ground or the enemy is sieging your high ground, you can just have this creep sit back a bit, be in aura range, and cast this spell. And of course, speaking of the aura, it's a 3 armor aura, which of course not as strong as the Alpha Wolf aura, but still it's 3 armor, it's not bad. It's like the armor that Vlad's provides. It's something. It's, I think, maybe slightly weaker than the Cloak aura on average, but still it's sort of in the same ballpark of strength. Another creep in that category is the Kobold Foreman. This has pathetic right-click stats, but it does have this speed aura. It's 12% movement speed aura. This is quite a lot actually, and it's useful at all stages of the game, but primarily it's something you pick up in the mid and late game, because in the early game you really do care a lot about the right-click damage that these creeps put out. Later on you're not really looking for these creeps to provide right-click damage, so it's more about the aura, and this aura is quite useful and quite strong. Very underrated creep. Another very underrated creep is this one. This is the Hill Troll Priest. This has a healing ability, which 15 heal per pop, and it also has this mana aura. This mana aura provides 2.5 mana regen, and that's the primary reason you want to pick this up in the mid or late game. So if you're low on health and mana, you can just have this creep heal you. The way you do it is just you cast heal once on it, and then it'll follow you around and continue healing you. So this is like a temporary creep you pick up when you're low, and then you ditch it for a better creep later on. So how do you actually control those creeps once you have them? Well, the key here is to have control groups. You can set this up in your settings under Hotkeys. Here you have control groups. I have control groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For most heroes, you're not going to need that many. The way this works is you assign a hotkey here, And then in my case, I would, for example, select these units and press Control 1. And then next time I press 1, it's going to bring up this control group. And if I double tap 1, then it's going to center on these units. And the setup I have usually here is I have 1 for all my units. And then I have 2 for my creep. Then I also, of course, have a separate hotkey for my hero. So in a hero like Visage, you need more control groups. So I have 2 for my familiars, 3 for my creep, and then I have 1 just for Visage and the familiars. Because often you don't want this creep to go in there, because if you just attack in with everything, your creep always gets focused and then often just dies. So often you just want to keep this creep a bit back. And then I also have a hotkey that allows you to select all my units. The way you set this up in the settings is here, select all controlled units. So I have this if I also want to include this creep in what I'm doing. Just generally later on in the game, you have these aura creeps or your frost mage, and you just want to keep these creeps safe. You don't really want to right click with them in a team fight at least. Of course, you do want them to contribute right click damage if it's just farming neutral camps or pushing on waves, or you're pushing an objective that's not defended by the enemy. But if you expect to meet any sort of resistance, just have your creep follow you maybe as sort of the default, and then if the fight breaks out, you just park it a bit outside the fight so you can still provide the aura. This is a 1200 range, so it's quite a big range, and you just want to keep this creep safe. If you just let it run in, it's just going to die, it's going to feed 200 gold, and you're going to be out a valuable creep. So don't do that, just keep your creeps safe in the mid and late game. And control group setups are an important part of making sure your groups stay safe. On a hero like Lycan, I have a bit more complicated setup. So I have 1 control group for everything, and I have 1 just for my wolves. I have 1 for my creep. I have another group for my ranged necro units, so I can use this purge effectively without having to tab through. And then I have extra control groups for each of my individual wolves. So if I want to scout around with these wolves, maybe like follow some enemy hero around, I can use these groups to move my individual wolves, which can come in quite handy. It's important to note that these hotkey assignments are persistent, so they stay with you even if you start a new game. So even if I've never summoned this necro archer before in this game, I still have it on 4. It's always on 4. You can just set this up in demo mode or in a botnet or something like that before you play Lycan in a real game, and just have all of your control groups and setups right away. And this hotkey for my creep, for Dominator, stays with me even if I dominate a different creep. So right now I have on 3 the Centaur Conqueror, and if I take over this Alpha Wolf, it's still on 3. So this makes micro a lot easier compared to the old version in Dota 1. So let's put it all together. We want to go for this Viper here. First you slow him, and you run past here, stomp, use a howl, and that is an easy kill. If you just do this a regular way without any sort of particular micro, you just run after this guy, you know, see, he's not really dying. It takes forever to actually kill this guy. I mean, he's eventually dying, but it just takes so much longer. And a real game against an enemy that's actually fighting back and actually being rescued by his teammates, we're probably not getting this kill. And that's why practicing your micro or having these control groups set up ahead of time is so important. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and tell your friends to help spread the word of Obelisk. Coming up on this channel is going to be an update to my guide to Chen creeps. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell button. And in the meantime, you can watch these videos, and Obelisk willing, I'll see you there.